Hello, I'm Nathan Laube, and welcome back for this penultimate installment of this week-long concert from St. Matthew the Apostle Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Today I'd like to explore with you one of the interesting and relatively little-known genres of organ repertoire, which is the Pastorale. The Pastorale first probably became important and prolific musical model in 18th century Italy, where a number of composers who were also important influences on Johann Sebastian Bach wrote such pastorales, often with a drone in the bass, with some sort of lilting figuration, often in 12/8 or 6/8. For example, if you know The Messiah by Handel, there's a little pastoral in the middle called Piva, which is there to imitate these Christmas-like scenes with shepherds piping and the calm, the stoic nature, the placid nature that a drone pedal like a musette gives to the musical ambiance. And Bach himself, therefore, wrote a wonderful pastoral in several movements. But the pastoral then ended up taking on a new life in the 19th century, as brilliantly evidenced by Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony No. 6, a work incidentally also in F major, but which sheds a lot of these Christmas time connotations and rather becomes a piece about the experience of being in nature. And of course, in the 19th century, as the Industrial Revolution was taking form and fundamentally changing the structures of society, there was such a reaction against that lots of people, lots of philosophers, lots of musicians really turned back to nature. And there was so much emphasis on finding oneself in nature. This is such a central theme in 19th century thought. And we see that also played out, therefore, in music. That music often represents or illustrates lots of different events which happen in nature, or paints little vignettes of these things which are experienced. For example, in Wandering Through the Woods, a quintessential German theme in 19th century music, the whole idea of wandering. Or, for example, in France and often in Italy, depicting thunderstorms. Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, for example, shows us all of these things, all sorts of natural phenomenon. For example, listening to a brook, the water bubbling on the rocks, or a beautiful vista, sun-drenched in the summer, or, of course, thunderstorms. And in the 19th century in France, this was also taken up, therefore, by organists who loved to improvise pastorals, not only as an opportunity to paint these wonderful bucolic scenes, but or dramatic scenes in the case of the thunderstorm, but also to use them as showpieces for demonstrating all the different qualities of the organs, having an opportunity to go through individual stops, the clarinet, the various flutes, often again imitating this shepherd's piping or bird song in this case. And Roger-Ducasse ended up taking up this form, albeit in the early 20th century in a spectacularly atmospheric setting, one that's full of glorious twists and turns, almost now that you're in an early automobile and you're driving through the French countryside, and as you go by each little village or over one hill, all of a sudden a new world opens up and your attention is drawn to something else. So this is a bit the spirit of the Roger-Ducasse pastoral, a brilliantly impressionistic work in its harmonic language, drawing from the harmonies that we often associate with composers like Claude Debussy and Ravel, very coloristic harmonic vocabulary, and of course really exploiting the use of coloristic registration at the organ in an extreme way. And this was, of course, made possible by all of the advances in organ technology after the turn of the century, when electricity, for example, was being brought in to organ design, and which allowed organists to change stops very rapidly and, so to speak, change the scene instantly. Another thing that you can think about in this piece is how it relates to other orchestral music which was being written at this time. The piece dates from 1909, and that is to say that it comes just before the big Stravinsky ballets, which made him so famous in Paris. It comes just before, for example, Daphnis et Chloé of Ravel, one of the spectacular masterpieces of modern orchestration. It comes just after the Mahler symphonies. It comes just before other cycles that really use the orchestra in a remarkably virtuoso way, really demonstrating all of the modern possibilities of what a highly trained virtuoso orchestra can do, like the Holst Planets or the Respighi tone poems like Pines and Fountains of Rome. So this gives you a sense of how composers now are often also starting to think of using the organ as a more orchestral instrument than a purely symphonic instrument, with a somewhat more limited palette like you heard in the music of Franck. So anyway, I invite you to join me on this countryside expedition, on a beautiful summer afternoon, hopefully with a little glass of wine or something like that. It's a wonderfully lazy piece, but of course, like any good pastoral, it includes a very violent and quite spectacular thunderstorm. So enjoy, and I look forward to sharing with you some Widor tomorrow for our final installment. See you then.